Okay, so in today's Healthcast then I want to talk about the concept of no pain, no gain. Now this is something that I really did used to believe in. I used to train extremely hard, I really pushed myself, and as I've got older I've realised that that's probably wasn't a super sensible thing to do for me. But at the same time, I think of a number of achievements as far as marathons, ultra marathons, cycling across countries and things like this that I've done in the past where no pain, no gain certainly applied, and it was definitely a positive experience. So why am I kind of changing my mind on that sort of thing? Well, it kind of depends. The ability to go through a bit of a pain barrier with exercise often depends on the person doing it, and depends on their age doing it, and depends on the likelihood of the problems it might cause in the future doing it. So as an example, a lot of people take inspiration from people like ultra marathon runners, people who have achieved massive feats in weight training, or athletes, things like that. Maybe like Usain Bolt, for example, would be a great example of someone who might inspire inspiration in an athlete to really train hard and be successful. And obviously, to be successful at most things, you need to put the effort in, and you need to make some sacrifices and maybe go through different kinds of pain barriers. But the problem is that a lot of the people that I looked up to in the athletic world are freaks. A lot of them are freaks, and they've got extremely robust bodies. They're able to put themselves through incredible amounts of training without suffering too badly for it. I find that some people have just got naturally very good posture, they've got naturally very good gait, they're natural athletes, and then some people just aren't, and you can tell this from quite early ages, possibly even from a baby or a toddler. For example, my daughter is slightly hypermobile, so she's probably about a year behind everyone else in walking, and I don't know whether that's going to have a big effect on her later in life. Possibly not, as she's got me as a dad, but it certainly is going to make things harder for her, and that there may be people on all different stages of the spectrum, from obviously very disabled people who have just got no chance of being high-level athletes, except in a disabled context, to like the superhuman athletes. So I watched a documentary on Netflix the other day about a guy who summited all of the 8,000 plus meter peaks, and the guy is a physical freak. He was in the Gurkhas and the Special Forces in the UK, and his body could just cope with these kind of unbelievable feats of endurance. Now, if it was me, let's say I wanted to do the same thing, conquer all the 8,000 meter peaks in the world, it's very, very likely that my body just would not be able to handle doing that. Just like my body couldn't handle going through many more ultra marathons. I can remember doing my ultra marathon in the Alps in Australia, the Australian Alps. It's quite a brutal ultra marathon, and people say, oh, once you've done one, then you're hooked, so you have to keep on doing more. That just definitely wasn't the case. Once I'd done one, my body had had enough, and there was really no chance I was going to be able to do another one. I was just not in good enough shape physically to do it. And this is going to be the same for other people. You may have fitness goals or athletic goals, and with all the will in the world, you can work as hard as you like. You're not going to get there if your body won't let you. And this is the case. That it's not to say that just give up. It's all in the DNA and it's all pot luck. But there is definitely an element of DNA and pot luck in the ability to sustain hard work over time. And it's not really talked about. You kind of get these inspirational videos from people like David Goggins, and you see plenty of these these on YouTube. You can search them out, motivational videos to really train hard and achieve something. Where it's just not going to happen for some people unless they really sort out their biomechanics first, because they will get injured. Simple as that. So there are things that you can influence. So I think there's a bit of a difference between being overweight, for example, and just being injury prone. So there are going to be people that are going to be injury prone almost naturally. I think the vast majority of people don't really know what they're doing as far as their movement goes. They just kind of move. And some people are lucky to move well, and some people are not lucky to move well. And the injury prone are very likely not to be moving well. There's a difference between that, let's say, and being overweight. So you can do something about being overweight. You can eat a little less, do a little bit of extra exercise, that sort of thing. And of course, even that exists on a spectrum. There are going to be people that are going to have a super hard time losing weight, particularly if they have been overweight from a young age. They're going to have a much greater disadvantage than someone who has more recently put on weight, for example. But even that has a spectrum again. The kind of lifestyle you have, your DNA, your upbringing, the pressures on you, your personality, it's all going to come together to make it hard for some people and more difficult for others. But I think in the case of being overweight, there is probably always something that you can do, even with not too much knowledge. I mean, calories in, calories out. It's more complicated than that, but that is essentially what it is. It's not that simple with people who are injury prone. There's a lot going on in people's movement, in their posture, in how they walk, how they run, for example. It's just going to make it impossible for some people to reach the heights that other people are going to reach. Now that doesn't mean to say they can't improve. So probably the best advice I could give to anyone is just don't focus on other people so much. Just try and be better than you were yesterday, and trying to improve your biomechanics and improve your overall health and fitness is a bit like this. Just try and be better than the person you were the day before. You can, even now, I think that I move pretty well these days. I've corrected a lot of problems that I've had biomechanically, posturally, and with the way I move. But there's probably a 20-year-old in the gym that I go to who moves better than me, no doubt. Just by luck. He's probably doing everything wrong in his training, but he just moves great. He's got years on his side, and he moves really well. It's something that you tend to notice with young people. A good example is how high their bodies are kind of lifted. If you think back to kind of Sylvester Stallone in the Rocky movies, for example, his body had the appearance of kind of being lifted up, and then as he gets older, it kind of all droops towards the floor. And obviously young people have that look. And if you follow more of the other videos that I do, you'll kind of understand that feeling of being lifted a little bit, so nice expanded rib cage, has the effect of kind of mitigating the force of gravity and helping you move much better. And so young people are obviously going to have a huge advantage in this regard, but it's certainly not true of every young person, and it's just the way it is. And there almost always will be someone who will be better off than you no matter what you do, but you can only be better than the person you were yesterday. So what is it with people that can just keep doing things without getting injured into old age? What's going on? It's a complicated story to tell. It's almost impossible to know why these people are like that. I think it's probably a combination of good DNA, mostly good luck, to be honest. It's not something that I think, like I said before, that most people really know what they're doing when they're moving. I don't think I don't think that people who, for example, that can run well into their 60s and 70s really know how they can run longer and continue doing it into their 60s and 70s, where almost everybody else it's been a long time since they've been able to run properly. And they'll say it's hard work. Not really. Yes and no. Obviously, they've kept moving through their life. That's obviously helpful, but it's pretty much a state of luck for them. So I guess that they've got pretty good DNA in the first place. They're pretty lucky with their posture and their gait naturally. And then as they've aged, they've not done activities that have really negatively influenced it, or they've just had a body that's very resistant to maladaptations as they've got older, and they've just been able to keep on going and just keep on moving. Whereas continually, for most people, that if they just keep on going and keep on pushing as they get older, it's just almost inevitable for the vast majority of people that they're going to break down and they'll start experiencing postural and movement issues, so inefficiencies, reduced range of motion, and very likely chronic pain and chronic injury as well, and even some acute injury problems too. Something that is also a possibility is that is something called epigenetics. This is something I don't know too much about, but it's something that's really come into the discussion in recent years. So epigenetics is a kind of characteristics that you develop in your lifetime, and then these characteristics that you develop actually get encoded in your genes, and then you pass these on to your children. So for example, let's say you've spent 30 or let's say 20 years of desk job, and you've got really bad posture and you're really hunched over. In theory, it seems possible actually through epigenetics that you can pass your bad posture onto your child, believe it or not, that you acquired in your lifetime. This was something that was completely unheard of a few years ago, has only really just been discovered. And it's the same with weight as well. So if you have a particularly bad diet and you're obese, not as a child, but as you get older, something that wasn't necessarily given to you by your parents in your DNA, but then that's something that you've acquired as you've got older. Then you can pass on the genes for obesity or the ease of gaining weight to your children as well. I think that's an incredible thing to do, and it's something I'm not sure whether that's at play when I see people and their children move. So in quite a few of the classes that I do here in Cairns, I've noticed that I don't tend to see too many fathers and sons, but I often see mothers and daughters come to my class. So the daughters are usually teenagers, and so they come to the class together, and it is incredible that they move almost identically. Their movement dysfunctions are extremely similar. It's like watching a younger version of the other just move. And in fact, what I often see is that the younger version has much greater ranges of motion, but they have the same dysfunctional patterns of movement as their parents, and it's pretty easy to see how injuries can happen to these kids. And I wonder whether that is something that they've inherited solely just through DNA, and this has always been in their family for generations, or whether it's been inherited epigenetically, so it's just been passed on from mother to daughter in that generation, or whether there's a copying effect as well. So whether the daughter has been watching the mother move for their whole life and has just managed to somehow almost unconsciously copy their movement patterns. But it's just a pattern I see so often in my classes when I see mothers and daughters train together. It's really something. And it just proves that there's quite a lot of what you're doing when you move that's out of your control, and unless you really, really get dedicated into fixing it, just pushing forward and trying to break through the pain barrier is just not going to be an option, because no one can continue doing that. You just can't keep on breaking the pain barrier. Yeah, you can break it for a little bit, maybe you can put up with a niggle or two to begin with, but eventually it's going to catch up with you, and something really serious is going to happen where you snap an Achilles tendon or you tear knee ligaments, And if you snap an Achilles tendon, you're not going to just walk off that or continue running or finish a marathon or something like that with a snapped Achilles tendon. It's not possible, and you may live to regret it. So that's kind of my message on this short little health cast, that things aren't quite as simple as no pain, no gain. And yeah, take inspiration from these people that are pushing themselves and trying to encourage you to push yourselves, but your limits may very well be different to them, and unless you know what you're doing in a biomechanical sense, you can really cause yourself some pain and injury, not only in the present but possibly into the future. So on that merry note, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time.